Hello mathematicians, welcome back. Again, my name is Sam, and I will be guiding you through this penny activity. So, in our last video, pause. If you haven't seen our last video, which are the instructions for this, please go back to that video. If you've seen the instructions video, then you know. This video is where I'm actually going to do the activity with you guys. So, to begin, I am going to do what we call trial 1 or game 1 on our document, which means I'm going to go through the process of putting my pennies in a container, shaking them up, spilling them out, sorting them, and writing down how many heads I got after each shake. A moment ago, I mentioned our document. Here is our document. It might be helpful for you to print it out so you can write on it. If not, you could recreate this table on your own piece of paper. On the left-hand side of this document, we have our table for keeping track of how many heads per flip or shake we have. And on the right side, we have a graph, which we will get to later, but we are going to graph our data. Doing the activity. Alright, as you can see here, in this video, I am doing trial 1 or game 1 of our penny activity. So, I am shaking my container of pennies, I'm spilling them out, and I'm sorting them by heads and tails. On my paper, T represents tails, H represents heads. Each time I'm shaking it, that is times flipped on our table. Graphing our first trial/game. Here is the data I collected for game 1. Right now, I'm pointing to where it says number of yellows. We're going to cross that out, and we are going to write heads. The reason our table says number of yellows is because you could use counters for this activity, which have one side red, one side yellow. However, we are using pennies, so we are looking at heads and tails. Right now, you can see me pointing to the numbers at which we are going to graph. I put a dot or a point at 0, 100, which means before we started this activity, we had 100 pennies. As you go down and across the table, you can see that I am plotting the points for each data set. Our data set is the number of times flipped and the number of heads per round. A reminder, the number of times flipped is across the bottom of our graph, and the number of heads per round is across the left side of our graph. Now that I've plotted all of our points, I am going to go through and connect our points so we can see the shape of our graph a little bit better. I've finished plotting our points and connecting our points. Here I'm pointing out the interesting shape of our graph. I wonder if we will see this again after we've done 2 more games of this activity. My friends and mathematicians, when you do this activity, you are going to get different numbers than I am. They should be kind of close, but they're going to be a little bit different because each trial or game has different data points. Now it's your turn. You guys are welcome to use my data from game 1, or you could do game 1 over again. However, we're all going to have to do game 2 and 3 so we can look at our data. At this time, I would pause the video and I would go ahead and I would do our activity. I'd write down what we found, our data, and then I'd graph all of our games, and then I'd come back to this video so I can talk to you about what we're seeing. What math is going on here? Pause the video here and complete our penny activity. After all 3 trials/games are completed. Hopefully you all have completed games 1 through 3 of our penny activity and you're ready to talk about it with me. So on our left-hand side again, we have our table. Here I have filled out in 3 different colors each game. This way when we graph it, we can see the difference. So looking at my numbers, they all kind of look around the same for each times flipped, which is interesting because when we graph it, they all make the same shape. I wonder why that is. I want you mathematicians to go look at your table and graph. So our data points are generally looking around the same number. All of our graphs are kind of the same shape. Why do we think that is? What's going on here? Let's think for a minute. You might want to pause the video if you need more time to think. If not, carry on so you can hear my explanation of what's really going on here. Penny activity explained. So, friends, this is probability. What's happening is pennies have two sides, which means when you flip them, you're equally likely to get either a head or a tail. So it's a 50-50 shot which one you get, which means when we have all 100, we shake them up, we spread them out, and we sort them, we should roughly have 50 pennies that have heads and 50 pennies that have tails. In a perfect world, every time we would shake and spill out our pennies, we'd have half heads, half tails. However, we all know that sometimes things don't turn out perfect. That's why we get roughly half of the pennies that we started with once we shake them and spill them out. About half of those pennies will be heads, half will be tails. So the probability of getting heads is 50%. The probability of getting tails is also 50%. That's why our graph looks the way it does. Each trial or round that we go through with our times flipped, we're cutting our pennies in half essentially. Half of them we're getting rid of because they're tails and we're only keeping the heads, which means that we have a 50-50 shot of getting heads or tails. Once again, great job mathematicians on completing this activity. I hope you all are having a good week. Again, my name is Sam and I'm from Kittitas Valley Math Circles. Nice job, mathematicians. See you later.